A horse's defiant charge ignites a Lakota warrior's bold rescue of a doomed ranch. A rancher teetering on ruin. A secret carved in a smuggler's sigil. And a horse, bearing the mark of destiny, will shift the tides. In the unforgiving Dakota Territory of 1878, Elizabeth Hayes, a 22-year-old daughter of a drought-stricken legacy, faces the loss of her family's ranch to a ruthless banker. But from the prairie's heart, Starlight, a russet mare with luminous eyes, carries a Lakota prophecy and a hidden truth: salvation or perilous gambit. With only a fading memory of her mother to guide her, Elizabeth plunges into a struggle where greed twists justice, and courage. Is all will she reclaim her home, or be crushed by the claws of avarice? Subscribe now to Gallop into the Saga, where every hoofbeat pulses with freedom and truth. The Dakota Territory of 1878 stretched beneath a pitiless sun, its grasslands a woven tapestry of amber and grit, murmuring tales of grit through winds, laced with the tang of scorched earth. The Hayes Ranch, a legacy carved across 3 generations, teetered on collapse, its fields withered by 6 unyielding years of drought. Elizabeth Hayes, 22, rode Starlight, a mare of russet flame, her eyes radiant with stellar fire, along the western fence, her calloused hands probing splintered posts for decay. Her chestnut hair whipped free, framing a face where resolve clashed with the silent wound of her mother's death, 5 years carved into her soul. As Elizabeth tethered Starlight to mend a sagging rail, her father's absence in the fields, once unthinkable, whispered his quiet surrender to ruin. Hoofbeats shattered the prairie's hush, and a rider in black loomed from the haze, his horse's flanks slick with foam. He halted, flinging a paper stamped with Clearwater's blood-red seal. To the dust. Thomas Hayes has 30 days to pay $5,000, he barked, voice sharp as flint. Or Marshall Crawford claims this ranch land heard all. Elizabeth's fingers clamped to the reins, her pulse a resolute drum. She snatched the paper, tearing it before his eyes. My father will pay, she snapped, resolving to mask the dread twisting her gut. The man's sneer bared yellowed teeth. He wheeled his mount, vanishing into a churn of dust, the fragments scattering like wounded sparrows. That night, in the stable's shadowed refuge, Elizabeth pressed her cheek to Starlight's warm flank, the mare's silken mane a tether against despair. The scent of hay and horseflesh grounded her as memories surged, her mother's voice urging courage. Starlight's first gallop under their shared reign. Do you see her in the stars? She whispered, tears tracing silent paths. Starlight's soft nicker answered her luminous eyes, catching moonlight like a vow. Another memory flared at 10, lost in the prairie's vastness. Elizabeth had been guided home by a Lakota boy, his shy gift of cornmeal, a spark of hope beneath a boundless sky. Who can save us now? She murmured, clutching Starlight, the last ember of her mother's spirit. The wind outside keened, offering no solace, only the weight of a future trembling on the edge of ruin. A ghostly fog cloaked the Hayes Ranch at dawn, its tendrils curling around the corral, where 20 horses stirred their breath, misting in the chill. The herd, once the ranch's lifeblood, now faced sacrifice to appease a $5,000 debt that bit like frost into the family's heart. Elizabeth stood by the weathered fence, her fists clenched until her knuckles shone pale, her gaze fixed on Starlight, the russet mare whose luminous eyes held a shard of her soul. Each horse was a thread in the ranch's legacy, but Starlight was its heartbeat, woven with her mother's laughter and love. Thomas Hayes emerged from the barn, his face a map of sorrow, the drought's toll etched deeper than the cracked earth beneath his boots. Today the herd would be sold, a desperate bid to stall the bank's relentless maw. Elizabeth's throat burned with unspoken pleas as she watched her father, his once steady frame bowed by defeat. Hooves churned the dust as Marshal Crawford arrived, his silver-streaked hair gleaming under a tailored hat, Samuel Blackwood at his side like a vulture's shadow, Crawford's eyes cold as a winter stream swept the herd with predatory calm. Fine stock. Hayes, he said, his voice slick as frost. But the market's tight. 800 for the lot. He leaned toward Blackwood, whispering, Control. There's spring, and I control this county. Thomas's jaw clenched, his silence a surrender to ruin's tide. Elizabeth surged forward, her voice raw with rebellion. Starlight stays, she's family. Her father's hand, heavy with regret, settled on her shoulder, his fingers trembling as he recalled his wife's laughter, riding beside him. Lizzie, we've no choice, he rasped, eyes glistening. Crawford's gaze slithered to Elizabeth, appraising her. Like chattel, such spirit, he murmured, menace, lacing his tone. Perhaps you'd fetch a finer price than horses, Miss Hayes. The words coiled around her, chilling her blood, but she held his stare, chin lifted against his leering threat. Crawford's men moved with brutal efficiency, roping the herd. Starlight reared hooves, slashing the air, her piercing whinny, a cry of rebellion that echoed in Elizabeth's chest. Elizabeth darted to her, wrapping her arms around the russet neck. You're stronger than them, she whispered, tears soaking the silken mane. Starlight's eyes blazed unyielding, vowing to defy her chains. Rough hands yanked the rope, and the mare was dragged away, head high, her spirit a flame no cruelty could douse. The herd's hoofbeats faded into the fog, each thud a wound in Elizabeth's heart. She sank to her knees by the empty corral dust, clinging to her tear-streaked cheeks. A memory flickered. A Lakota boy, 12 years past, sharing cornmeal under a prairie sky. His quiet kindness, a lifeline in her fear. Who will fight for us now? She whispered, the ranch's silence swallowing her words. Starlight was gone, and with her, the last echo of her mother's warmth seemed extinguished, leaving only the icy grip of Crawford's greed and the specter of a future stripped bare. 10 miles from Clearwater, Marshal Crawford's ranch hulked like a blight on the prairie's rolling folds, its barns exhaling a stench of decay and dread. Within the sagging stable's gloom, the Hayes horses stood shackled, their coats dulled by grime, their spirits bruised. Starlight, the russet mare, with eyes like radiant flames, lingered in a shadowed stall, her flanks quivering from her capture's ordeal. The air choked with moldy straw and fear, a cruel mockery of the Hayes ranch's open embrace. Crawford strode in his polished boots clashing with the filth-strewn floor, a leather whip coiled like a serpent in his grip. At 45, he was a colossus of greed, his wealth built on smuggled horses, spirited across the Canadian border. This forsaken ranch was his covert hub, a linchpin for his illicit trade. Starlight's rebellion had sparked his fury. She'd lunged at the stall gate's splintering wood, and thrown a rider, her wild whinny, a challenge to his rule. His lips twisted as he approached, eyes glinting with malice. Defiant cur. He snarled the whip, cracking across Starlight's flank. A scarlet welt bloomed. Yet the mare staggered, but stood tall, hooves striking the earth, her gaze an indomitable blaze. You'll kneel, or perish, Crawford hissed, striking again. Starlight's head roared, eyes locked on his, a silent oath to endure. His rage aided for now. He turned to Samuel Blackwood, who lingered by the door, his sharp features unreadable. Blackwood's gaze flicked to a faded deed on the wall, a relic of Crawford's lost inheritance, the wound that fueled his hunger for control. The Hayes spring is our prize, Crawford said, voice low and venomous. It secures our smuggling routes. Their debt delivers it. Blackwood's nod was cold, as the steel at his hip, unseen. A stable hand reeking of whiskey fumbled with Starlight's saddle. A leather scrap, etched with the Black Eagle sigil of Crawford's ring, slipped from his belt. He'd meant to burn it, proof of his own ties to the ring, but panic drove it into the saddlebag, a damning secret hidden in haste. As Crawford and Blackwood exited, Starlight stood resolute, her breath steady despite the fire in her wounds. Moonlight pierced a cracked board, igniting her radiant gaze with purpose. These rank walls could not bind her spirit. The saddlebag, heavy with its hidden truth, pulsed with destiny. In the quiet, Starlight's ears pricked, catching the prairie's distant call, a summons to freedom, to Elizabeth, to a justice she bore unknowingly. The night held its breath, the land itself urging her toward a reckoning that would unravel Crawford's empire. Night swathed Crawford's ranch in a velvet shroud, the prairie's pulse, a chorus of crickets and restless hooves. A gibbous moon cast silver ribbons across the grasslands, glinting off the stable. Where Starlight stood, her russet coat marred by dust and blood. The air hung heavy, tainted by the guard's whiskey-soaked snores, as he slumped against the barn. The stable door ajar, in his negligence, a breach in the cage, where freedom's spark flickered. Starlight's ears twitched, her radiant eyes slicing through the gloom. With a surge of will, she reared hooves, shattering the stall's brittle gate. The splintering wood roused two Hayes horses, their eyes flashing with hope. Starlight's whinny cleaved the night, a rallying cry, and she charged through the open door, her companions thundering behind. They tore across the yard, hooves drumming a rebellious anthem, their forms swallowed by the prairie's boundless embrace. The wind howled a hymn of liberation, whipping Starlight's mane. As she ran, the whip's sting fading against her indomitable spirit. Her heart beat not just for freedom, but for the girl whose voice echoed in her soul. The saddlebag, bearing the Black Eagle sigil, thumped against her side, a secret bound for justice. The prairie unfurled its grasses, swaying under the moon's gaze, both refuge and gauntlet. Starlight wove through a jagged ravine, hooves dancing over stones. A rider's lantern flickered in the distance, his shout sharp, but she veered into a gully, hooves silent, outpacing pursuit. As dawn's rose-gold tendrils crept over the horizon, Starlight's pace faltered her chest, heaving steam rising from her sweat-drenched coat. The trailing horses lagged, their strength spent, but Starlight pressed on, driven by an unbreakable bond. From a rise, she glimpsed the Hayes Ranch, its faint glow, a lodestar in the mist, yet a deeper instinct stirred a pull beyond home. Her nostrils flared, sensing smoke and sage, and she veered toward a cottonwood-shrouded valley, the hidden sanctuary of Swift River's Lakota band. Starlight's hooves struck with purpose, the saddlebag's weight, a silent vow. She whinnied soft, yet resolute, as if the prairie's ancient spirits guided her path. The valley opened its shadows. In a valley cradled by cottonwoods, standing like ancient sentinels, Swift River's Lakota band had woven their camp into the prairie's quiet pulse, their teepees rising like prayers against the dawn. Morning light sifted through the leaves, gilding the earth where Swift River 24 tended a smoldering fire. Born of a Lakota mother and a White Scout father, he bore both worlds in his sinewy frame, his dark eyes sharp with wisdom, his hair bound with a lone eagle feather. Beside him, Wind Dancer, a black stallion with a coat like polished night, stood vigilant, his loyalty mirroring his rider's steadfast heart. A faint whinny pierced the stillness, drawing Swift River's gaze. Starlight stumbled into the valley, her russet coat caked with dust, a raw welt scarring her flank. Grey Wolf, the band's 70-year-old elder, emerged from his tipi, his clouded eyes alight with knowing this mare carries a tale. He said, voice rough as wind-scoured stone, his fingers lingering on Starlight's neck, recalling a horse that carried his son through a lost battle. Swift River approached his presence, calming the mare, her radiant gaze meeting him with trust that stirred his soul. Dawn? Song Swift River's sister brought a woven blanket to warm the mare, her smile a quiet welcome. Kneeling, Swift River examined the wound, fingers grazing the whip's cruel mark. From a beaded pouch, he drew Lakota medicines, yarrow sage, bitter root, grinding them into a paste with spring water. As he smoothed it over Starlight's scar, he sang a chant, its melody, a river winding through the valley, easing her pain. Checking the camp's edge, he spotted fresh hoofprints, hinting at Crawford's scouts, a shadow on their peace. Grey Wolf's lips curved, his voice soft. She is a spirit horse sent to guide. He spoke of a Lakota tale, a steed weaving paths through warring tribes, its hoofbeats heralding peace. Swift River's hands stilled on the saddle where the Hayes brand gleamed. A memory flared. A girl, 12 summers past, sharing cornmeal under a star-strewn sky. Her eyes wide, but kind. His pulse quickened, sensing fate's weave. The spirits bind her to us, Grey Wolf, intoned his words, heavy with prophecy. She calls you to bridge worlds, Swift River. The elder's tale of a horse uniting tribes and settlers sank deep, Starlight's steady breath affirming her role, tethering her beside Wind Dancer, who nickered a gentle greeting. Swift River felt the valley's calm pierced by urgency. Starlight was no stray. She was a messenger, her scars and saddlebag summons to act. The fire's embers glowed as he resolved to return her home, to unravel the cruelty etched in her flesh, and find the girl whose memory burned like a star in his heart. The prairie's whisper urged him onward, promising a reckoning that would echo beyond the valley. binding fractured fates under the dawn's tender light, cradling the promise of reunion, not just with Elizabeth, but with a warrior whose fate hers was destined to entwine. Starlight was no mere fugitive. She was a harbinger, her flight kindling a chain of destinies that would bind fractured worlds and unveil truths buried in the dust. The dawn's light crowned her, a beacon galloping toward a reckoning that would reshape the prairie's song. Moonlight bathed the Dakota prairie in silver, its grasslands shimmering like a restless sea where shadows flitted like wraiths. Swift River rode. Wind, dancer the black stallion's hooves, carving a steady cadence, while Starlight, the russet mare, forged ahead despite her weary stride. Her radiant eyes locked on an unseen lodestar. The night air bit with sage and the musk of earth, a reminder of the land's ancient heartbeat. Swift River's senses were taut catching fresh hoofprints near a dry creek bed. Crawford's scouts, their presence a tightening noose around the Hayes ranch. His jaw clenched the weight of his task, pressing harder to return Starlight and unravel the cruelty scarred into her flesh. A lone rider's silhouette flickered on a distant ridge. His lantern's glow, a fleeting threat, Swift River reigned. Wind dancer into a gully, Starlight following her hooves, silent as the shadow vanished with a curse. The close call sharpened his resolve, her saddlebag's hidden sigil thumping against her flank like a vow. As they pressed on, Wind dancer froze ears flicking before a patch of trampled grass. Swift River dismounted fingers brushing a concealed wire trap, its steel glinting like a viper's fang. The stallion sidestepped, a hidden ditch guiding Starlight with a nudge, his dark eyes sharp with instinct. Wise friend Swift. River murmured, stroking his neck, gratitude anchoring him as he dismantled the snare. By a weathered boulder, Swift River paused, offering Starlight water from his canteen, her lips brushing his palm with trust. Her welt stark under moonlight was a testament to the enemy they faced. His thoughts drifted to Grey Wolf's warnings, soldiers and settlers closing in on Lakota lands. Yet a girl's face lingered 12 summers past her cornmeal, shared under a starlit sky. Her kindness, a beacon in his youth. Starlight's soft whinny urged him forward, her determination mirroring his own, a call to her home and answers. The Hayes Ranch emerged its lamplight, a fragile glow against the night's vastness. Swift River's heart stirred, sensing a reunion beyond place, a soul tied to his by fate's delicate threads. Starlight's pace quickened. Head high the saddlebag's secret, a silent pledge. The prairie's wind sang low, carrying sage and the promise of reckoning. Swift River rode on the trap's steel still cold in his palm, knowing this journey was the first note in a song of justice where Starlight's hoofbeats would resound far beyond the dawn, weaving worlds together in their defiant rhythm. The prairie exhaled a golden dusk, its grasses ablaze under a sinking sun, casting long shadows across the Hayes Ranch. Elizabeth stood by the corral's weathered fence, her chestnut hair loose, her eyes hollowed by Starlight's absence, a wound as raw as her mother's death 5 years past. She clutched a silver locket, her mother's gift, its weight a fragile tether to hope. Could Starlight's return outlast Crawford's wrath? The thought gnawed as the wind carried only silence, until a faint tremor of hooves stirred the earth, quickening her pulse. A russet form emerged from the horizon. Starlight dust caked but unbowed, her luminous eyes blazing through the twilight. Elizabeth's breath caught a cry, tearing free, as she ran barefoot over hard-packed dirt, heedless of stones biting her soles. She flung herself at the mare, arms encircling her sweat-slick neck, tears soaking the russet mane as she clutched the locket. "You came back?" she whispered, voice breaking, fingers tracing the whip's cruel welt on Starlight's flank. The mare, nickered muzzle pressing Elizabeth's shoulder, a vow of endurance, sealed in their reunion. Hooves crunched behind, and Elizabeth looked up to a black stallion, Wind Dancer, bearing a rider whose presence owned the fading light. Swift River dismounted, his Lakota garb adorned with an eagle feather, his dark eyes holding a quiet knowing. "The girl who shared cornmeal under a prairie sky," he said, voice, a low current stirring memories of a lost child guided home. 12 years ago, Elizabeth's gaze met his recognition. Barking like flint, Swift River, she murmured, her heart thrumming with their shared past, the locket warm against her chest. Thomas burst from the house, hand shaking as he touched Starlight. Guilt for his failure surfacing in his weathered face. Lizzie, how he began, but Elizabeth's tearful recounting of Starlight's return, Swift River's arrival, stilled him. She led the mare to the stable hands, gentle on the reins. Starlight's steps, a balm to her frayed spirit. Under the lantern's glow, Elizabeth brushed the mare's coat each stroke, unearthing her mother's laughter, her voice urging courage as they rode together. "She'd be proud of you," Elizabeth whispered, throat tight, the locket's clasp clicking open to reveal a faded image. Her mother's smile easing the scar of loss. Swift River lingered by the stable door, silhouette framed against the dusk. Wind Dancer grazing nearby. "This mare chose her path," he said, words deliberate, "and led me to you." Elizabeth turned, meeting his gaze, sensing purpose beyond chance in their reunion. The boy who'd saved her was now a man, his presence kindling hope where despair had reigned. "Why now?" she asked, voice soft but searching. Swift River's eyes held hers, unflinching. Some bonds endure, waiting to reshape fates. As stars pierced the deepening sky, the ranch pulsed with life, its silence replaced by starlight and Wind Dancer's soft nickers. Elizabeth stood beside the mare, hand on her russet flank, Crawford's threat looming yet distant. In Swift River's steady gaze, in Starlight's defiant return, she glimpsed redemption, a chance to reclaim the strength her mother had sown. The prairie's wind whispered of battles ahead, but this reunion was a triumph, a promise that broken things could mend under the stars that had guided Starlight home. In the opulent heart of Clearwater's bank, Marshal Crawford's office gleamed with polished mahogany, a throne for his empire of greed. A faded deed on the wall, a relic of land lost in his youth, fueled his ruthless hunger for control. The air was thick with cigar smoke and menace, as he paced, silver-streaked hair catching the lamplight eyes, blazing with fury. Starlight's escape had fractured his iron grip, a defiance that gnawed at his pride. That mare was leverage. He snarled to Samuel Blackwood, rigid by the door, sharp features taut. "The Hayes spring is mine. Water for our roots. Power over this territory. We strike now. Crawford's scheme bloomed like poison. He'd hasten the foreclosure auction, the Hayes Ranch publicly, and dangle Elizabeth as a collateral prize to crush her family and flaunt his dominion. Their debt is my noose, he said, a cruel smile curling his lips. If they resist, the girl pays. Blackwood nodded his silence, a honed blade. Though his eyes flickered with caution, sensing the risk in Crawford's escalating wrath. At the Hayes Ranch, dawn broke with brittle calm, grasslands shimmering under a tentative sun. Elizabeth tended Starlight in the stable hands steady as she cleaned the mare's welt, heart lifted by reunion, but shadowed by dread. Swift River, inspecting the saddlebag, froze as his fingers found a leather scrap etched with a black eagle sigil, a mark he'd heard of from a Lakota trader tied to a smuggling ring bleeding the plains. He recalled the trader's tale of a stolen horse bearing the same mark a thread to Crawford's crimes. His jaw tightened, the pieces aligning. Starlight's escape was no accident, but a spark of justice. Boots crunched on gravel, snapping their focus. Two of Crawford's men loomed at the stable door faces, hard as flint hands near revolvers. Hayes owes 5,000 by month's end. One growled, knife glinting as he spun it. Crawford's done waiting. Another sneered at Swift River. No savage outsorts him. Elizabeth stepped forward, voice steel, despite her racing pulse. Tell your master we'll pay. The man leered, gaze raking her. He might prefer other coin, girl. Swift River glided between them, hand resting on his bone-handled knife. Presence. A gathering storm. Leave this land, he said, voice low, eyes unyielding. The men faltered under his gaze, retreating with muttered threats. Crawford's coming. Black Hawk. One spat their footsteps, fading into dust. Thomas emerged from the house, face pale but resolute, joining them. Swift River showed the sigil, recounting the trader's tale, stolen horses, secret trails, Crawford's hand in it all. Starlight brought proof of his crimes. He said, voice steady, this ends in Clearwater. Elizabeth's fingers brushed Starlight's mane, determination hardening. He won't break us, she vowed. The mare's rebellion fueling her own. Thomas met Swift River's eyes. What's our move? Swift River's gaze was a forge, tempering their purpose. We face him at his auction. It's his trap and his undoing. The prairie wind stirred carrying sage and the promise of reckoning. As Elizabeth looked to Starlight, her luminous eyes a beacon, Crawford's shadow loomed, but in the mare's return, and Swift River's resolve, she saw a path to justice, one they'd carve together no matter the cost. Beneath a moon-draped sky, the Hayes Ranch kitchen glowed with a single lantern's flicker, its warmth a frail bulwark against the chill of looming ruin. Elizabeth Thomas and Swift River sat around the scarred oak table, the air heavy with coffee's bitter tang and unspoken resolve. Starlight's return and the Black Eagle sigil had ignited a spark of faith, but Crawford's auction in Clearwater loomed like a noose, his trap tightening around the ranch's heart. Swift River's dark eyes steady as the prairie's pulse met theirs, his voice resolute. We end this at his auction. My people's gold traded from for will clear your debt. Elizabeth's fingers tightened around her mug, heart caught between fear and the ember of trust, kindled by Starlight's rebellion. What if the gold wasn't enough to sway Clearwater's greed? $10,000, she asked, voice soft but probing. Swift River nodded his eagle feather, catching the light, enough to silence Crawford and expose his crimes. He tapped the black eagle sigil, its edges worn but damning. The Lakota have tracked his smuggling for months, and a traitor's tale of a marked horse confirms it. Thomas leaned forward, doubt etching his weathered face. What if he calls your bluff? Swift River's gaze held firm, his father's words echoing. Justice begins with one stand. Not with Judge Chambers there, he said. Elizabeth studied him. The boy who'd led her through darkness now, a warrior charting a path through peril. You saved me once. She said words, a quiet vow. I believe you can again. His eyes softened, a fleeting warmth, breaking his stoic mask, binding them across time. Thomas's voice cracked, heavy with remorse. I failed you, Lizzie. Selling Starlight, letting Crawford corner us. He rose, oiling his old rifle, vowing to protect her. This time, I'm with you now. Whatever it takes. Swift River inclined his head, respect in his eyes. Then we ride at dawn. The auction is our battlefield. Outside Swift River led Starlight and Wind Dancer to the stable, checking hooves and saddles under the moon's silver gaze. Elizabeth followed, breath misting in the cool air, drawn by his quiet strength. Can we win? She asked, voice barely a whisper. Starlight's presence grounding her. Swift River paused, hand on Wind Dancer's flank, his father's faith in justice, steadying him with Starlight's courage. And your heart we cannot lose. His words, simple yet certain, wove conviction through her doubt. Elizabeth touched Starlight's mane, the mare's luminous eyes mirroring her determination. The prairie wind stirred tarrying sage and the promise of reckoning. Crawford's auction loomed a crucible for their fates. In the stable's dim embrace, Elizabeth felt the weight of their plan. The gold, the sigil, the man who'd rekindled her faith. The night held its breath, the land poised to witness their stand, a battle, not just for the ranch, but for bonds that defied time and division, forged in the fire of Starlight's return. The Clearwater Town Hall blazed with chandelier light, its polished floors and white-clad tables a cruel facade for the grim spectacle within. The air thrummed with the murmurs of Clearwater's elite, their eyes glinting with greed as Marshal Crawford took the stage. Silver-streaked hair gleaming, his smile, a veiled dagger. He declared the auction to resolve the Hayes debt, but his words dripped venom, branding Elizabeth a collateral prize if the $5,000 remained unpaid. Elizabeth stood beside Thomas at the hall's edge, chin high her emerald silk gown, Crawford's gift, a chain of humiliation. Her heart pounded, age jeer from the crowd, a lash against her pride. Yet she refused to break. Thomas gripped her hand, fury and shame etching his weathered face. This wasn't the deal, he growled, shoving past Samuel Blackwood's looming form. Shielding Elizabeth Crawford's men flanked them, a silent threat as the bidding surged. $3,000, $4,000, each sum a shackle on the ranch's heart. "A merchant," John Tate shouted. "No! Indians, gold, buys our town," his voice stoking the crowd's disdain. Elizabeth's nails dug into her palms, gaze fixed on the floor, until the hall's double doors crashed open with a thunderclap. Swift River strode in Lakota garb, stark against tailored suits, an eagle feather woven into his hair, dark eyes ablaze with purpose. The crowd hushed, gasps rippling as he flung a leather pouch onto a table, gold nuggets spilling like a river of fire. $10,000, he declared, voice a resonant horse, filling the hall, enough to clear the Hayes debt and end this farce. Elizabeth's breath caught faith flaring as she met his gaze. The boy from her past, now a warrior, rewriting her fate. Crawford's face paled composure, shattering. "You dare disrupt my auction." Black Hawk, he spat, but Swift River advanced undaunted, drawing the black eagle sigil. "This marks your smuggling ring," he said, holding it aloft. "Horses stolen, driven across borders, your hands stained. My people tracked your men, and a trader's tale of a marked steed confirms it." His words struck like arrows, detailing secret trails and midnight deals. The crowd stirred, some nodded at the truth, others clutched wallets torn by greed. Judge Chambers rose, iron gray hair catching the light. "Enough," he commanded, voice a gavel. "This evidence demands investigation. Crawford, your bank's records are seized." Crawford's eyes blazed, but Blackwood's grip held him. "This isn't over," he hissed, as marshals escorted him out, his empire crumbling under Swift River's truth. Tate's scowl faltered, the crowd's unease overtaking their smugness. Elizabeth stepped forward, humiliation turned to victory, gaze locked on Swift River. "Thank you," she whispered, voice thick with gratitude. Outside starlight and wind, dancers stood tethered their knickers, a chorus of triumph. She crossed to the mare, stroking her russet mane, luminous eyes, reflecting her reborn strength. Thomas joined her, his rifle lowered, pride replacing shame. The hall's clamor faded, replaced by the prairie's distant song. Elizabeth stood between her father and Swift River, the ranch reclaimed. Her spirit unshackled. Crawford's fall was a spark, igniting a future she'd forge with those who'd stood beside her under the stars that had guided Starlight home. A week after the auction's upheaval, Clearwater hummed with the fallout of Crawford's unmasking. U.S. Marshals had ransacked his ranch and bank, unearthing ledgers, exposing his smuggling empire, stolen horses, forged bills, trails snaking to Canada. Crawford, caged in a Bismarck cell awaiting trial, was a toppled titan, his threats reduced to hollow snarls. The Hayes Ranch, its $5,000 debt erased by Swift River's gold, stood reborn under a tentative autumn sun. Fields no longer shadowed by ruin, but whispering renewal. Elizabeth walked the pasture's edge at dusk, the prairie's grasses swaying, starlight grazing nearby russet coat, gleaming despite the whip's fading scar. The mare's return had eased a fracture in Elizabeth's heart, but the victory felt tender, a single thread in a larger tapestry. Swift River joined her by the creek, threading the ranch its waters, the prize Crawford had craved. His Lakota garb blended with twilight dark eyes, reflecting the stream's ripple. "This water is power," he said, voice Steady, Crawford sought it to chain the territory. We can use it to unite. He spoke of a Lakota prayer to seal their bond. His words, a quiet vow of harmony. Elizabeth turned, chestnut hair catching the fading light. Unite how, she asked. Sensing his vision's weight, Swift River's gaze swept the horizon where ranch met Lakota wilds. A bond between our peoples, shared water knowledge, a stand against division. His word kindled a dream, not just for the ranch, but for a fractured land. Crawford's gone, but Sheriff Wilson warns of townsfolk plotting to challenge us. He added, the alliance's fragility clear. Thomas approached, face softened by relief, but etched with regret. I let you bear this, Lizzie, he said, voice rough. Selling Starlight, bowing to Crawford. I failed you. He met Swift River's eyes, shoulders squaring. This alliance, learning your ways, it honors your mother. I'm in. Elizabeth's throat tightened, touching his arm. Forgiveness. Unspoken, her strength drawn from Starlight's rebellion. And Swift River's courage. Swift River nodded respect in his gaze. We start now. My band brings tracking drought, grazing. Your ranch offers water. Stability. Together we were unyielding. Elizabeth envisioned it. Lakota teepees by the creek. Ranch hands and warriors sharing toil. Defying old hatreds. Doubt lingered. Clearwater's whispers could grow to roars. It's a hard path, she said, voice firm. But Starlight led us this far. That night, Elizabeth sat by the stable, brushing Starlight's mane under lantern light, the mare's luminous eyes mirroring her thoughts. She traced the welt, a mark of cruelty overcome, seeing her mother's face, her laughter, her call to fight. The loss softened, woven into strength, kindled by the ranch's salvation and the man who'd stood with her. Swift River's prayer echoed in her mind, a vow to the land. Too. The prairie's wind sang, carrying the creek's murmur, and a promise of an alliance to reshape their world. Crawford's defeat was a spark. What they built now would be a flame enduring under the stars that had guided Starlight home. 2 weeks after Crawford's downfall, the Hayes Ranch pulsed with fragile vitality, its fields kissed by an autumn sun. Elizabeth crossed the creek to the Lakota camp, nestled in a draw where teepees stood like sentinels amid cottonwoods. Swift River and Gray Wolf greeted her faces, warm but vigilant, the air rich with sage and wood smoke. The camp, a testament to the Hayes-Lakota alliance, was a bridge between worlds. Yet Sheriff Wilson's warning of Clearwater's brewing unrest shadowed its promise. Dawn Song, Swift River's sister, joined them, her woven basket of herbs, a quiet offering her presence, highlighting the strength of Lakota women. Gray Wolf led Elizabeth to a fire-lit circle of stones, his 70 years etched in lines of endurance. Today, you join our way, he said, voice a low rumble, handing her a smooth riverstone. His fingers lingered, recalling a horse that carried his daughter to safety, now lost to time, a loss that bound him to Starlight's tale. Elizabeth placed the stone in the sacred ring, a prayer for the land's harmony, her hands steady with the axe weight. Swift River stood near Eagle Feather, catching the breeze, dark eyes steady as he translated. The earth binds us, he said, settler and Lakota, as it bound you to Starlight. As dusk fell, Gray Wolf lit a sage bundle smoke, curling skyward. He shared a Lakota tale of a star-born horse weaving paths through warring tribes, its hoofbeats, a call to peace. Starlight carries that spirit, he said, his loss lending weight to the words. Elizabeth's heart stirred, seeing the mare in the story. Her return a spark of ancient magic. Dawnsong taught her to weave a prayer bead into her braid. Fingers deft smile, welcoming. You carry the prairie's heart. Swift, River said softly, his gaze a quiet tether, easing her grief for her mother into a tapestry of kinship. Grey Wolf's clouded eyes met hers. No stranger here. Daughter of the stars? The words sank deep, firelight blending with her mother's laughter. Starlight's luminous gaze. Elizabeth joined, a prayer chant voice, tentative but growing bold. Lakota words resonating like a song her soul knew. The camp felt like family, bound by purpose, mirroring the ranch's rebirth. Returning at twilight. Elizabeth found Starlight beside Wind Dancer by the creek, their silhouettes framed against the fading sky. She stroked the mare's russet mane, whispering, "You led me here." The welt nearly healed, marked battles won the camp's warmth, kindling a strength transcending loss. Swift, River appeared, steady as the earth. You've walked the first step, he said, gaze holding hers, a shared path, unspoken. The prairie's wind carried the camp's chants mingling with the creek's murmur, a harmony of worlds once divided. Elizabeth stood between Starlight and Swift River, the prayer bead a vow in her hair. The alliance was young, its roots tender, yet in this moment she felt its promise, a community forged to heal, to thrive under the stars that had guided her through darkness to this newfound light. Clearwater's whispers loomed, but the fire's glow held firm, a beacon of what courage and kinship could build. Autumn's amber hues bathed the Hayes Ranch. 3 months later, its fields vibrant with the fruits of the Hayes-Lakota alliance. By the creek, Lakota Tippus stood in quiet harmony, with the barns their people sharing water, and wisdom, drought-hardened grazing paths, settler irrigation sparking new growth. Elizabeth walked the boundary, chestnut hair woven with a Lakota bead, heart lifted by ranch hands, and Lakota warriors laboring together their laughter, a fragile rebuke to the territory's old divides. Yet Clearwater's whispers of unrest, fanned by figures like Merchant, John Tate, shadowed their dream. In the new meeting hall, timber and Lakota carvings fused tension, flared. Jacob Mason, a neighboring rancher, confronted the alliance, face taut with suspicion. "Your water sharing threatens my claim," he growled, voice echoing. A Lakota elder, Red Hawk added dissent, questioning settler motives. Why share our lifeblood with those who take Elizabeth beside Swift? River felt the weight of their words' prejudice, a blade against their vision. Swift, River's dark eyes steady, as the prairie's pulse met Mason's. Shared water strengthens us all. Your herd thrives because of this creek. Red Hawk's scowl held, but he listened. Elizabeth stepped forward, voice clear. We build a future, not steal one. Join us, Jacob, Red Hawk, and we all gain. Her words, rooted in Starlight's courage, eased Mason's glare. After fierce debate, both agreed to a trial partnership. Their nods hard-won, the hall buzzing with cautious hope. That evening, the community gathered to celebrate the alliance's growth, the creek mirroring a bonfire's glow. Starlight and Wind Dancer, adorned with Lakota paint and feathers, led a procession, their hoofbeats a rhythm of unity. Elizabeth rode Starlight, emerald eyes alight. Swift River on Wind Dancer, his presence an anchor. Laughter wove with Lakota songs and settler fiddles, though some settlers hesitated wary of the chance until Starlight lead drew them in. As flames leaped, a shadow struck. A lean figure in Chicago black slipped from the trees, torch flaring toward the stable. Running Fox, a Lakota youth, shouted, "Intruders, swift!" River leaped from Wind Dancer, tackling the man as the torch fell harmlessly. Wind Dancer reared, blocking the stranger's escape, saving a child from the flames' reach. Ranch hands and Lakota warriors converged, pinning the attacker, his Chicago accent spitting. Crawford sends his regards, a hired blade sent to torch the alliance's heart. Elizabeth dismounted, pulse racing, voice steady. "Your master's done," she said, Starlight's strength coursing through her. The community Lakota and settler as one bound him. For Sheriff Wilson's deputy, the bonfire roared, light unbroken, a testament to resilience. Swift River met Elizabeth's gaze, a silent vow deepening their bond. As the celebration resumed, some settlers joined hands with Lakota Mason. Among them, the alliance's roots sinking deeper. Elizabeth rode Starlight beside Swift River, the prairie's wind carrying sage and victory. They'd faced a true test and emerged stronger, a beacon of what courage could forge. Under the stars, with Red Hawk's grudging respect and Mason's pledge, Elizabeth felt a future take hold, a world where Starlight's hoofbeats and their shared dream would endure unyielding against any storm. Spring of 1879 bathed the Hayes Ranch in a tender glow. Its fields, unfurling in lush green, kissed by a sun that banished winter's chill. The Hayes Lakota alliance had taken root, its bounty clear in shared labor. Lakota families tending crops by the creek ranch, hands mastering drought-resistant grazing. Teepees stood proudly near barns, canvas and timber blending, a testament to a dream born from an auction's crucible. Elizabeth stood on the porch, chestnut hair woven with a Lakota bead, heart swelling at children, settler and Lakota, chasing each other through grass, their laughter a song of promise. Whispers of new land disputes stirred in Clearwater, a shadow on their dawn. Yet the alliance held firm. Swift River joined her, Lakota garb softened by morning light, dark eyes mirroring the creek's sparkle. "We've reshaped the prairie's song," he said, voice, a quiet current carrying their journey's weight. Elizabeth nodded, gaze sweeping the land. From loss to this she murmured, recalling Starlight's return, Crawford's fall, the alliance forged in defiance. The ranch was no longer a mere homestead, but a beacon, its creek uniting worlds once sundered. Thomas waved from the fields, teaching a Lakota youth to plow his labor, a quiet honor to her mother's memory. They saddled Starlight and Wind Dancer, riding to a rise overlooking the valley, hooves drumming a steady rhythm. Starlight's russet coat gleamed, luminous eyes bright, despite the faint scar, a symbol of resilience. Wind Dancer, sleek and loyal, kept pace, his bond with Swift River echoing the trust between riders. At the crest, Elizabeth dismounted the prairie, stretching boundless grasses swaying like a sea under the spring sky. "We built this together," she said, turning to Swift River. Voice soft but resolute. His gaze met hers, unguarded. The warrior, softened by warmth grown through trials. "And we'll keep building," he replied, stepping closer. "But I want more than alliance." Elizabeth, his words simple, yet profound, dissolved lingering barriers. "I've walked between worlds, never whole. With you, I've found a path honoring both." He touched the bead in her braid, recalling their cornmeal. Under the stars, a memory binding them. Elizabeth's breath caught the boy from her past now, a man offering his heart. "The world won't ease our way," she said, honesty. "A bridge. But I choose that path beside you." Their hands met fingers entwining a quiet vow, sealed under the sun's embrace, rooted in starlight's courage and their shared fire. No grand oaths, only the truth of a bond forged in struggle. And they rode back, starlight and Wind Dancer, moving as one. The ranch and camp, vibrant mosaic below Elizabeth, glanced at Swift River, his eagle feather catching the breeze. Her mother's loss transformed, not erased but woven into strength carrying her forward. Starlight nickered free and whole. Her life at the ranch, a testament to the freedom they'd won. The prairie's wind sang bearing sage and new beginnings. As Elizabeth and Swift River rode toward a future, they'd shape a world where stars guided not just horses, but hearts toward a dawn unbroken by division, resilient against the shadows yet to come.